Hi, I'm Jeff Gonzalez, president of Trident Concepts, and I'm here with Brownells Daily Defense to talk to you about annual ammunition allocation. So, what is that all about? Well, it's about planning. I get this question fairly often from students that want to know, well, what should I do to get better, to improve my shooting? It's a great question, and it's kind of a complicated question to answer. So one of the ways that I will engage with students is to ask them, well, what is your long-term vision? What do you expect to try to achieve? And sometimes they don't have a good answer. So that's the first thing, is that you want to probably sit down and figure out, what should be a goal that I have? And sky's the limit in that case. From there, we talk about a long-term plan. And usually I base it around a 12-month period. And in that 12-month period, I give myself like 2 months off. So that really means that we're talking about 10 months. So if you can start with that long-term plan in that format, then it allows us to start to talk about ammunition purchase, because if you want to get good, you're going to have to actually go to the range and shoot. So when we factor in cost, that to me is probably the biggest limiter. Time is always going to be challenging. Facilities are going to be unique, but really it's the cost of trying to get the ammunition. That usually is a big obstacle. So what I tell people is make a plan and then buy your ammunition in bulk. So what are we talking about as far as buying ammunition? Usually I reference it by cases of ammo, and most training ammunition comes in a case of 1,000 rounds. So when I talk about my 1K plan, what that really means is that I'm going to allocate basically 100 rounds for 10 months. And that's a good distribution. And what are you going to get from that? Well, what you can expect is you can get really good at understanding the basics, like what we're talking about, like your grip, your sights, your trigger, your follow through. We can really start to develop that and understand that a little bit better. But remember that you've only got 100 rounds for each of your training sessions. Now, of course, you can double up. If you know you're going to be on vacation for the summer, you can maybe front load and then kick the can down to the earlier months and later months. That's always an option for you. So you do 200 and then another 200 and empty out that middle summer month period. But just realize that 100 rounds every time you go to the range in a 30-day period is actually pretty reasonable and also sustaining. But let's say that you want to get a little bit better. What if you want to actually see improvements? You want to actually start to see your accuracy improve and your time improve. Well, now we're going to have to move up to what I call the 2K limit. And so at 2K, now we're looking at spending 200 rounds in a month. Now, that could be looked at in one of two ways. First, I can go to the range for 2 100 sessions because I understand how to use my 100 rounds, because that's what I kind of started with. And so I can maybe split that up so that I go to the range twice in the month for 100 rounds each time. Or I can go single visit for 200 rounds. The benefit of that single visit is when time and facilities are a challenge, you know that you only have to plan to go to the range once, and when you do, you're going to have 200 rounds. So that kind of works in your favor to some extent. But let's say that that is still not the ultimate goal. Let's just say that you really want to be at the top level, at the elite level of the shooting world, if you will. Well, you're gonna have to invest a lot in both time, your talent, and your treasure. So that means that when it comes to the ammunition cost, you're probably looking at about 5,000 rounds. Now, what do you get for that? Well, you get 500 rounds in your 10-month period, 500 each month, I should say. And what can you do with that? Well, again, you can subdivide it. 2 range visits of 250 each time, single range visit 500. You've got a lot of options there. But the key is that when you're at that 5K level, you really have to be very detailed about how every round needs to be allocated. Now, I could say the same thing for the 2K and the 1K plan, but it becomes extremely important. Otherwise, you're just shooting the ammunition to just shoot the ammunition. So you really need to make sure that every round is accounted for in some way, shape, or form. You have to create your actual range plan, like what you're going to do when you go to the range for that particular session, to understand, to get full benefit and full value from what you're doing. So the next question that I sometimes get is, what about my defensive ammunition? How does that work into this? Well, again, defensive ammunition is typically more expensive, but you also don't need to purchase quite as much of it. What I do recommend is that you take your magazine loadout for your defensive carry firearm, whatever that's going to be. let's just say 25 rounds. And what I recommend is that you have at least 4 loadouts. So that basically would be 100 rounds. So you would have to go out and buy 100 rounds of that defensive ammunition. What that's going to do is it's going to do you a favor in the sense that you have, a nest egg put aside for the rainy days. But it also means that you periodically can go and shoot your defensive ammunition, which is one of the things that we talk about. You need to make sure that it functions in your firearm magazines. But it also gives you the little nest egg down the road. This is all kind of rolling into the proficiency requirements. What are your standards that you're looking for? As you get a little bit more comfortable with the actual different levels and different benefits for each level, you'll start to actually narrow in on those specific goals that you're trying to achieve. For instance, I might want to have a 1-second draw at the 7-yard line. Great. Well, now you have a plan to try to get there, and you have the actual support through your ammunition allocation. So these are just some suggestions, some ideas, but it gives you a little bit more substance to think about as far as when I want to try to get better, what can I do? All right. I'd love to hear your questions or comments. Please feel free to post them down below. Until then, take care, stay safe.